Here's what's coming up in episode 133. Amber Choisella.
A friend told me to look at a psychic group to join to learn what's going on with me. I did, and I found a spiritualist church in Sacramento, and that's where I developed my mediumship skills. It was just like this overall just darkness just cloaking over me, and I was like, oh my God, this is never going to go away. And then once I got into counseling, that, eventually it lifted. And so I was like, that was such a powerful thing for me to go through. I know that I could help others in the same situation.
You mentioned that moment where you realized that your work in counseling needed to combine with the spiritual aspect. What was that moment?
When we struggle through life, you're like a beautiful rose that's like not blossomed. And then once you get over that darkness, you blossom and then you rise. So, like flowers, they blossom out of the ground and they rise and they grow. That felt so fitting for me.
Welcome to the Big Seance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the seance.
Happy almost New Year, Paranerds. Although I suppose it could be the new year by the time you hear this. My guest today is Amber Choisella of Blossom and Rise. She's been a listener for years, and you've seen her in the Big Seance Parlor on Facebook. Before I take you to our fun conversation and Amber's bio, I wanted to make sure and mention her website, which is blossomandrise.com. Makes sense, right? And her Facebook page, which you can find at facebook.com/blossomandrise. Go ahead and pour your tea. Hi, Amber.
Hey, Patrick.
What can I offer you to drink today?
Well, something warm because it is freezing and snowy outside. So I'll say whiskey and ginger ale.
Whiskey and ginger ale. That is a first. And I already told Amber, but this is a first for me too, that I'm having eggnog, like straight up for real eggnog. And so you'd probably be enjoying this as well in your cold California environment over there. Tahoe area, right?
Yes, absolutely. I like, you know what? Instead of eggnog, I like to drink the almond nog because it tastes just like it without the dairy because I'm lactose intolerant. But yes, nog is good for this time of year.
I have never heard of almond nog.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing. I do enjoy almond milk, so I might have to check that out. So I wanted to introduce Amber to you guys. Amber Choisella is a psychic medium, therapist, and a spiritual development mentor. She holds a master's degree for clinical mental health counseling, a bachelor's degree for metaphysical counseling, and currently possesses ministerial status through the University of Metaphysics. She is currently working on her master's level for metaphysical counseling. She first experienced spiritual phenomena as a child and has been continuously developing her spiritualistic abilities to assist human consciousness at this time. She grew up experiencing spiritual phenomena that created fear and anxiety from childhood up until adulthood. I'm going to ask her about that. It wasn't until the passing of her grandfather, where she experienced a knowing that he would pass, that she decided to develop her spiritual gifts further. Counseling was amazing for her as an adolescent, so she decided to give back to others the same way counseling had done for her. But she realized she was missing a serious, significant aspect of her work, and that was the spiritual component. Amber believes that spirituality is an essential component of one's overall wellness. She created Blossom and Rise to assist others in developing their innate spiritual abilities, aid in recognizing and removing energetic blockages, provide psychic mediumship readings, and counsel and support clients in reaching their highest best throughout life's challenges. Amber thrives in helping others and loves to share knowledge and encourage growth in others. Well, Amber has been an active Paranerd listener for a long time now, and listeners who are also members of the Big Seance Parlor on Facebook know who she is. And I've known that she's had some cool things going on in her own spiritual journey, and I decided it was time to chat and hear all about it. So after reading your bio, I'm very curious to know more about some of those childhood experiences that you say unfortunately caused you so much fear and anxiety. Fill us in on that.
Well, first, I'm going to have to say, like, the bio sounds like amazing to hear it back. I was like, wow, that sounds pretty good. Like, wow, that's a lot.
Wow, an awesome person must have written it.
I know, right? But no, my childhood, it was interesting to say the least. My first memory of spirit was when I was 6 years old, and my grandmother's best friend lived around the corner from us, and we were always with her. She was like grandma number 3, really grandma number 2, because we didn't see our dad's mom that often. But she had told me, it was a Friday, and she told me if I ever got in trouble, that she would find out. And she like did one of those fingers, like I'm doing now, but I can't really explain it. Like, don't you do that? Like a threatening finger, you know. Anyway.
One of those gestures where you just know.
Right. So I was like, okay. And so we were supposed to see her the next morning, and we got a phone call in the morning saying that she had passed overnight, which is really devastating to me because I was 6 years old, didn't have the concept that we die. And I thought we lived on forever, obviously, as a child. And so that was really devastating. We did not go to the funeral or the wake or any of that. That's just way too much for me. So I want to say like a few weeks after her passing, me and my sister were in the front room on the pull-out couch because I'm assuming we had guests. Don't remember who they were. But something woke me up out of my sleep, and I got up and I looked in the foyer between the living room and the dining room, and there she was. And I saw her as if I was seeing somebody in 3D, just like a solid person. She was wearing all white, and she had like a white little hat tilted to the side. And she was looking at me, and she was doing the, I know what you did type of thing. I got up so fast and ran to my grandparents' room and slept with my grandma. And I told her about it in the morning. She's like, well, that's really weird because that's exactly what she wore. But how would you know that if you didn't go to the funeral? That was like the main thing that I remember starting my whole journey. Mm-hmm. When I was 21, my grandmother, I was telling her stories about things I experienced. And she goes, well, when you were a baby, I had you and your sister in a carriage, and we were at the grocery store. And this woman walks up to me and she asked me, which one of you guys were the spiritual one? And she said she didn't know. And the woman pointed to me. And I was like, that was just really amazing because that told me that she supported me and she believed in me. It was like, when I was 21, I was like, Grandma, how come you didn't tell me this as a child? You know, but it's still important. But yeah, like, it was a trip. And then from then on, like, I would see things and hear things, especially at night. I would hear like people talking. I couldn't quite hear what they were saying, but I could make out that it was a man and a woman. I would feel things, like, again, see things. It was crazy. And my twin sister, I have a twin sister, she doesn't experience any of this stuff. And so I had no one really to talk to about it. It scared me. Yeah.
It's funny because that early experience that you had, those are the kinds of experiences that many listeners and myself, you know, forever always have begged for. Yet you have to think about when you're 6, you know, what that could really do. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like the message was meant to be in that first experience and visit? Like, was there a message that was meant to pass on to you? I kind of wonder about the gesture, the pointing finger gesture, like if that was meant to just kind of calm you and say, yep, that's her.
You know, I've never thought about that question, but as you say that, I feel that it was her way of telling me that she was still around and still knew what was going on, even if her physical body was no longer here.
Mm-hmm. Did that calm you, or did you still have, some fears about death for a while after that?
No, it definitely still scared me. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't understand it. I didn't have anyone to talk to me about it. So it's that, again, that fear of the unknown, right? We fear what we don't understand. So I like prayed not to see anything anymore.
Did you have support from your family after you told them?
Not really, no. But my grandfather would tell me he would like see his brother and sister when I was younger. Like they would come to him at night, but it was never like something that was like a regular thing. And my grandfather had it up until he passed at 88. Like he still had his memory. He was sharp. And so I never doubted when he would tell me stories like that. But that was as far as it went.
What age were you when you started kind of piecing it together for yourself and coming to terms with some of the abilities that you were developing and some of the experiences that you'd had?
Really, it wasn't until before my grandfather passed. Well, actually, like after that. I couldn't piece together. Like I did not know that I had anxiety until I was in my graduate program. Like looking back all these years, I'm like, oh my God, I suffer from anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety. And my partner was like, you're always super anxious. And I'm like, really? Oh, that's the word for it. That's how I would feel because I would sense these things and it would make me nervous as if something bad was going to happen to someone. But in all reality, I was just picking up energies. I just didn't know what that meant at that time. So of course, all this fear and anxiety was happening around me. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's me breaking in from the future. At the end of the interview, Amber wanted to make sure she told us about events surrounding her grandfather's death and how that led to her developing her mediumship skills. I decided this was a great place to insert her story.
The night before everything went down, I was at a friend's house in my neighborhood, and I got this really bad feeling that something was going to happen, and I couldn't place it. So I called my grandparents. My grandfather answered, which he never did. Said he was getting ready to go to bed, so I was like, okay. So the feeling didn't pass, and so I knew before I went to bed that I was going to get waken up in the middle of the night and be told to come home. So about 2:30 in the morning, I woke up at like 2, and then like I got a phone call at like 2:30. And my grandma was like, come home, your grandfather fell. So it's okay. So I go home, my grandfather fell. He had like mini strokes was what happened. He hit his head, bleeding, said he refused to go with the paramedics. And I called 911, he refused. And so they asked me to take him to the hospital, which is like 10 minutes from the house. On the way there, I get hit and my car gets totaled.
Shut up.
Swear. Car got totaled. I ended up in the hospital.
Was your grandfather with you?
Huh? No, he went before me. So we get to the hospital. I get released. I go see him. And he kisses me on my forehead and tells me that he loves me, which he never did. And so like the day after that, maybe a day or two, I called his room to check up on him, see how he was doing. No answer. And then right when I hung up the phone, the hospital called and told my grandma that they're unable to wake up my grandfather, like he was unconscious. And they wanted to know if they could do surgery because he had a brain bleed. What ended up happening was they did the surgery and his brain kept bleeding. So my grandmother made the choice to take him off life support, which was really hard for her because they've been together for like 70 years or something like that up to that point. So like that was her lifetime partner, her like
wow.
Everything. And so before he passed, I knew, I was like, he's going to pass. And that was that feeling. That's what it was. And come to find out, that's what it was. So it was like preparing me, giving me a knowledge of something that I didn't quite understand at the time, but looking back on it, I was like, yeah, that's what it was. So a friend told me to look at a psychic group to join, to learn what's going on with me. I did. And I found a spiritualist church in Sacramento. And that's where I developed my mediumship skills. I took the Morris Pratt course, which is the course that they do mediumship, they do healing, they do ministry work, teaching, if you want to do that. And I just found home there.
How many years ago was this?
6 years ago.
Okay.
So when I hear people saying that they're a spiritualist, I'm always like, oh, modern spiritualism. And people, they use that to identify as being spiritual, but I'm like, being a spiritualist is actually a real religion. And as a matter of fact, me and Danielle M. Holdman, she's also a spiritualist. And we're actually going to have a conversation about like, what's the difference between a spiritualist and a metaphysician. So stay tuned for that. We still haven't done that yet, but I like to educate people on that because it's very...
I love that you two found each other. That's cool.
I found her on your show, which is really awesome. Like, I love Danielle. Danielle, I love you. I hope you're listening.
She's cool.
She is.
And you mentioned, you talk about the benefit of counseling. Is that when counseling started for you, or was that earlier? When did counseling start?
Right. So counseling started when I was 16 years old. I went through this stage of depression. I want to say it was after my paternal grandmother passed. And my mom, thank God, bless her soul, she recognized it and she got me into counseling. And it was the best thing that she could have ever done. It was just like this overall just darkness just cloaking over me. And I was like, oh my God, this is never going to go away. And then once I got into counseling, that, eventually it lifted. And so I was like, that was such a powerful thing for me to go through. I know that I could help others in the same situation.
Mm-hmm. I could say the same thing. Counseling for myself when I was in high school and coming out was a really important part of, me being cool with who I am. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely pro being okay with counseling and having it be a normal part of life and healthy, and everybody should think about it.
Absolutely. Because, I just had a client tell me, a teenager, one of my clients, she told me the other day that when she's in session, she can be the real person that she is. And then outside of counseling, she has all these different masks that she wears. And for me to be able to hold that space for her, right? So I think about that in that terms. And then I think about people that are experiencing spiritual phenomena and how that feels to be able to talk to someone that's not going to label you as like crazy or you're having hallucinations, and then I have the clinical background of what, all those symptoms look like versus what is it that you're actually having, like a mediumistic occurrence, right? Like you are actually seeing these things, are not hallucinations, and you're not crazy. I don't really like the word crazy anyway. It's very judgmental, but you know what I mean? Like to really empower and support kids, because it happens at a young age. I mean, it can happen in later years. It's called latent abilities when they just they appear later in life.
So many people fear coming out as paranormal experiencers and, different phenomena, because there is this worry, and history has not always treated experiencers of paranormal phenomena well. There were time periods where people would be put away, and women for sure would be, they could easily just be put away because they, were quote unquote crazy. And so I think there's still that element of people being afraid of really sharing their experiences because they don't want to be seen as crazy. And so how do you make it known that you, like, how do people find you, or parents, how do they find you, or people who need counseling but also want to be okay with opening up about these experiences? How do they find you? Because obviously you're going to be the best person for it, because you're going to be open to that and not judgmental about those experiences.
So I offer what is called metaphysical counseling. And it's basically using therapy with the interventions of spirituality and metaphysics, like meditation, praying, spirit readings, spirit messages. What else? Guided imagery. I like to include those. And so like people that are looking for that are going to come across it. Like what you seek is what you're going to find. Right. So I have one client that I did a reading for recently, and they started talking to me about some trauma that they've had in the past. And then they're actually awakening spiritually. And I'm like, that's a perfect opportunity for us to look at your past traumas and then also incorporate the spiritual things that are going on with you right now. And so with counseling, we come up with goals and interventions. So what would the goal be? The goal would be to understand what's happening by using these specific interventions. Right. And that comes so easily to me because they're both subjects that I love, like working with psychotherapy and then working with spirituality. Right. Those things kind of rhyme. But that's my goofiness. But no, I mean, I'm strongly passionate about that. So if people are looking for that, they would have to like search out there. And I'm just now coming out with this service with Blossom and Rise. Like I created that this year, and
it's a new journey for you. You're into the early steps of it.
Absolutely. And so those that are seeking will find me.
You mentioned that moment where you realized that your work in counseling needed to combine with the spiritual aspect. What was that moment?
Actually, it's been in the back of my mind for some time now. And I didn't have like the confidence to do it. And for whatever reason, I felt like, I need my degree. I need to like graduate. And I feel like people would take me more seriously if I have the degree, if I have the initials after my name, oh, she's credible. But really, I didn't need that. But it was after I graduated that I was like, I'm going to do this because this is what I'm called to do. This is what I'm passionate. And so I have to follow that. And I really do feel like it's like my soul mission to help people in this way.
Well, you're going to have like 4 degrees. So how credible do you need to be? Come on.
I know. That's the student in me. I'm always learning. Like it never gets to a point where you stop learning. Like therapists, after you get your license, you have to continue with CEUs. I don't know if you do that too, but continuing education units. Like you have to be current on those. You have to have a specific amount of hours that you have to do because there's new things that come out that you need to learn, new approaches and whatnot. And same with spirituality, like that never ends. If you think about the soul, if it's infinite, then learning never ends in this life or the next life, And so I'm always growing and what I learn, I try to teach to others.
That's awesome. Do you notice a difference in this current kind of metaphysical study that you're doing and your previous degree programs? Like, what are the differences? Is it a big change?
No, not really, actually. And I have a close colleague friend of mine who does Reiki. And when I was in school still, I was working at a training ship site with her. And now what she's doing, she's combining her Reiki into her sessions with clients. So I think that is amazing. It's a integration. Right? Some therapists are very evidence-based. They want to use those approaches, which is fine. I'm for that too. But then there's the other aspects of energy work, like such as Reiki, that you can bring into sessions. And it works. It really works. I practice Reiki too, but that's not one of the things that oh yeah, I do Reiki. Like if someone were to ask me that, I'm like, yeah, we can do that. But that's not something that I'm like strongly leaning towards, if that makes sense.
How does the rest of mainstream counseling view this area of counseling that you're passionate about?
That's very interesting. I will say that counseling is more like trauma based. So people with trauma, right? And of course, yeah, you can incorporate spirituality, but you may have a client that is not spiritual, that's atheist or who's agnostic. And so I don't really talk about it unless my clients are open to it, which is different from my metaphysical practice. That's what I'm about because it says it in its title. So unless my clients tell me, okay, I'm into this, I don't bring it up in the session.
And that makes sense. Yeah. You don't have a, staunch Southern Baptist walk in your office and then start going off about spirit guides and
right. No, absolutely not. No.
Bust out some channeling or anything.
No, because they might look at me like, you're supposed to be the professional. You're acting crazier than me right now.
I know. So our friend in the Big Seance Parlor, I gave everybody the opportunities to submit a question, and he has a great question. And part of it we may have already answered. Some of our questions have been kind of involved at all, but he says in England, research in some of the more innovative training around integrating parapsychology and cognitive behavior therapy is growing. Do you do this in your own therapy with your clients?
No, I do not, but I do use CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy techniques when I work with my psychotherapeutic clients. As far as parapsychology, I want to say that's more of studying phenomena, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really work with the study of it per se. I work more with implementing spirituality rather than studying it.
What about a person's experiences or background or personality? How do you decide how to best implement, spirituality into their life? Like, I don't know, maybe can you give us like a fictional character and suggest how you best go about steps they can take?
Right. Okay. Like, so for example, if I had a client who struggled with maintaining balance in their lives and feeling like all over the place, and say they have a whole bunch of racing thoughts and they have all these ideas but can't put them down on paper, and they feel really insecure and don't feel grounded, well, that is a sign to me that they need to meditate and become grounded. So then I would suggest, hey, how do you feel about doing this grounding meditation? And let's use imagery. Like, you're a tree, you are strong, and your roots, they go down into the center of the earth and you rise above the whole earth, or, whatever, and empower them in that way. So you use visualization and meditation in that, right? And so then it's considered spiritual in aspect. You can do deep breathing. That's another technique that I work with littles. And I use the deep breathing when they're having anger issues or anxiety. And it all goes back to the breath, and breath work is a form of spirituality as well. But we don't call it spirituality in counseling. We call it mindfulness techniques. And those are becoming so popular in the classrooms, which is really great. And so like they don't know that they're taking a little bit of spirituality and integrating it into academia.
Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, in my classroom, at least on the vocal music side of things, because that's just half of my day, and not even choir, from the first moment I have new sixth graders, they're experiencing lockers for the first time. And they get so anxious and they're so nervous at their locker. Their hands are shaking and they're trying to put in the code and they're trying to get it open. And I always have to tell them, I said, here's some magic. Are you ready? I promise it's going to work. You take a giant breath and you blow it out really obnoxiously.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, and I sit there, and if they kind of fake me out, I'm like, no, for real. Like, giant breath, let me see you blow it out. And I promise you, like 90% of the time, even if they tried that locker combination 5 times and failed, after they took their giant breath and blew it out, they open it. And they look at me, it's funny, with their 6th grade big eyes, they look at me like, wow, shut up. And I'm like, I told you. And in the choir world too, that, anytime my kids have to do something that they're nervous about, audition for something or sing a solo or take a test even, I'm like, for real, take a giant breath, blow it out. Life will be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
It will be so much easier. Yeah, I'm all about the breathing there. Do you ever go into does a medium, like a reading, ever bust out in a counseling session? Do they have to have signed up for that? Or if something pops up, do you just come out with it?
Yep, I sure do. Whatever I feel guided that needs to come, I will say. And then I'll say the disclaimer. Okay, I'm a therapist. And so I'm going to give you some insight on this. Like, for instance, I just had a client and I did a reading for her and it was great. And afterwards, I always like to invite my clients to follow up with me if something came up in the reading they didn't understand, but it came to them afterwards, or something else that I just like to talk after the reading. Like, what is that word? I'm just a people person, period. And so after the reading, hey, hit me up. If you have a question or whatever, hit me up. I'm okay with that. So after the reading, she hits me up and she tells me that their partner is having issues with weight and mood and depression and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, it came in. So I was like, okay, well, they may have body dysmorphia, and that's actually an illness. So instead of thinking of it as something that she can't control, look at it more as an illness and have more empathy for her, right? Rather than saying it's a character defect. And then I was like, try looking at it a different perspective. And then when I told her that, she's like, you know what? I never thought about that. And so I was like, okay, well, that's the therapist coming out right there. And then also with readings, a lot of people want reassurance. And so for that tells me that they feel insecure about themselves. And so then the reading will then go from the questions that they're asking to me empowering and supporting them. So I think that's the great benefit that I have of having a therapist background.
How often do you have loved ones come through, past loved ones come through?
During my mediumship, right, my mediumship readings, they come through. But as far as my counseling, like psychotherapy clients, no, because I closed myself off at that time for that.
So tell us about Blossom and Rise, and where does that name come from, and how did Blossom and Rise start?
So last year, I kind of like dove into creating business, and I had a business coach that did not align with what I was trying to do spiritually. She wasn't specifically like a spiritual business coach, right? And so I felt rushed to create a name. So I created this long name. It was like the Free Spirited Spiritual Development Program or coaching. And that just didn't resonate with me anymore. I was like, that is way too long and that just doesn't feel good. And so I meditated on it and I asked Spirit to, give me a name, bring a name to me that it kind of explains what I do and feels good. And so then one day it was like Rise and Blossom. So I looked that up and I was like, I can't do that. Someone already took that. So then I reversed it, Blossom and Rise. And I'm like, when we struggle through life, you're like a beautiful rose that's like not blossom. And then once you get over that darkness, you blossom and then you rise. So, like flowers, they blossom out of the ground and they rise and they grow. That felt so fitting for me.
Sequentially, it makes sense to me. Blossoming first and then rising.
Right. And it still feels good. Because when I think about empowerment, I think about flowers and them blossoming. And plus my grandmother, her favorite flower was a rose. And she was a huge impact on my life and continues to be spiritually on my journey of development.
And I'm sure you did you probably recorded a video that very day that you discovered that Blossom and Rise is what it was going to be. I maybe even watched it.
Possibly. Yeah, I just got into like creating content for YouTube. And at first, like I used to trip over the content, like the video quality being pretty crappy. But now I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to say what I have to say and not really worry about the content so much.
And just be real.
Right. And be who I am. And that's what really matters.
Do you have any general tips for listeners who may just be starting out on their own spiritual journeys? One thing I've talked about a lot is when I first started out on, my spiritual shift, and I was so tired always. And it was almost a stressful thing being on this spiritual journey because I couldn't stop reading and I just craved everything. And I was craving pulling up blogs and reading every book that I can find. And it was tiring. And sometimes you have a kind of spiritual burnout, so I'm sure there's some good tips for people who are kind of in this early stage of spiritual development.
Well, I would say reach out to someone that is like-minded, someone that you trust, obviously. Join groups. And you know what? And it's okay to sit and be in a burnout. You trying to learn all this because nothing happens overnight, right? Knowledge is gained over time. If we were able to download everything in the universe that we needed, we'd be completely overwhelmed and burned out. So like giving yourself that time and space and saying, okay, I'm at a standstill, especially with development. Like say, for instance, my clairvoyance was really active right now. My third eye was completely open and I saw dead people all the time. That would be a burnout, right? And then there'll be a period where I don't see anything at all. And it's okay that you're not seeing anything at all because that might mean that, your spirit guides are preparing you to another gift that is getting ready to open up for you. And just to be patient with yourself because we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. All right. So we all have these innate abilities. They're natural to us. Right. And so some people are born with more abilities than others, but that doesn't mean that we can't develop them. This is part of our spiritual makeup.
It makes me think of when I first started out on this journey, someone should have grabbed me and told me, you should start developing something that's, developmentally appropriate for your stage of spiritual development, and it's just mainly that I was fascinated about it. But one of the first things I tried and read about and studied is astral travel.
Oh, yeah.
And channeling. Those were like the first things. And I have very, very little intuitive ability. So hello, channeling and astral travel was a little deep to just jump in on. So I wish I would have, started out small with like, I don't know, dowsing or
Right.
tarot. Oh my gosh, it's just so funny. Like, please, me sitting in my room trying to channel.
When that takes practice too. I mean, some people do it and they don't realize it's happening, but to actually like hone that ability, it takes practice and development. So it's funny that you said that, because when trying to develop my spiritual development program, I had like all these ideas and I was like, okay, how am I supposed to start this out? I want this to be really easy for beginners and like how I was many years ago. And I asked Spirit for help. And they told me that I need to just like break it down, simple. And each week it'll be something new on a different, like for instance, the different clairs and what that means. There's like many different ones. I think I'm going to cover like 5 of them, and then practice and see which one that client is strongest in and hone in on that. And I can't do this on my own. Okay. That's first off. I am open to help from Spirit. I say that all the time. It's like, as a medium and giving messages, it's like, this is not from me. I'm just the in between, and as I develop, it's just gaining that relationship with your guides and with Spirit overall. That's the most important part, because they're your support. They're loved ones, guides, teachers. They're all that here to support you, even if you don't feel like you have any support.
I never really considered asking anyone this actually, but do you have a goal for where you want to be spiritually? Is there a place you would love to be, I guess, with abilities and stuff?
The simple answer to that would be no. I'm always open for development and learning, whatever that may look like. That's positive, of course.
So, Amber, outside of the paranormal or counseling even, what kind of nerd are you?
I am I don't know if you can see this.
Snoopy?
I am a Peanuts nerd.
Peanuts.
And I love listening to Peanuts music.
Oh, me too, especially around the holidays.
It's Guaraldi Trio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that music. It just touches my soul.
That's awesome. So do you collect things?
I do. I have the shirt that I'm wearing is actually Peanuts. I have pajamas, pants. I have actually Vans, slip-ons that are all the Peanut characters that my partner got for my birthday this year. He really loves me. And little figurines. I have that. But yeah, I'm definitely a collector. I love that. I love eating. I love traveling. I love learning. I love music. No, not just Charlie Brown, but different variety of different music. And when I love a song, it's on repeat for at least 2 weeks. And then I find another song, and
you have to, that's kind of like me. You have to burn it out and then just move on.
Yes, absolutely. And I get that from my dad, because my dad did the same thing when I was growing up. What can I say?
Well, Amber, it has been so awesome having you on the show, and I'm glad we finally did it. And I want to make sure people remember that her website is blossomandrise.com, and she has a cool Facebook page, and Facebook is kind of your place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so her Facebook page is facebook.com/blossomandrise, and I'll put those links in the show notes. And Amber, do you have any final thoughts for us? Anything to send us away with?
I want to say that today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow, and then the day after that is another day. And don't get too caught up in the right now of what's going on. Especially if it's chaotic, like, it'll pass. Everything is temporary. Everything will be okay.
Especially in these days now, watching the news, and everything is controversial and everything's split in the middle, and that's how I think people could use that.
Yeah, everything's temporary, and I'm a true believer that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what it is in the moment, but within time, it'll reveal itself. I'm a true believer in that. Even the real stuff, mm-hmm. My language. But yeah, like, everything happens for a reason, and then we find out eventually what that means.
You rock, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you to the following super paranerds who support the show at patreon.com/big seance. Genesis, The Midnight Rose, Diana Lloyd, Natalie, Sonia B, Kim Robb, Jim Budd, Josiel Lorenzo, Susan Davey, and Paula Mitchell. My supporters at the Parlor guest level, who can be found at bigseance.com/parlor guests, are Linda of shimmeringmoons.com, Jeffrey Peck, Dina DeCastro of Dina DeCastro Astrology, Margaret Hagan, Sharon Bowles, Marion Hover Clairvoyant, Bruce Williams, Christopher Kohler, Lana and John of Carbon Lilies, Denise Sia, Anna Frias, Norman and Linda Keller, and Karen Prine. That sound you just heard was the Above and Beyond There's Not Even a Category for Your Level of Support fireworks display. Because I have an awesome listener who chooses to remain anonymous, who supports the show at the $10 level. Thank you, Paranerds.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com. You can find and subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and just about anywhere podcasts are found. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to bigseance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line, 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to bigseance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.
The Paranerd hashtag for today is Blossom and Rise. I don't think Amber's on Twitter unless she's hiding. So just tag me at Big Seance. Please say something fabulous about the show and use the hashtag Blossom and Rise. All one word. You rock.